Hey grade 10s, so today we're going to look at how we balance chemical equations. So if you'll remember, the last time you watched a video, it was about the law of conservation of mass. And so remember that the law of conservation of mass tells us that we don't create or destroy atoms in a chemical reaction. Remember, they just get rearranged. So we know there has to be the same number of atoms on each side of the chemical equation when we're writing it out. And so when we're writing a chemical equation showing the reaction, we have to make sure that we balance it. So one way to do that, or the only way I guess, is to add coefficients to in front of different compounds in the equation to make sure that it all balances. Okay, so just some general rules to kind of follow to make sure that you're balancing the chemical equation properly. So if you're just given a description of the reaction, the first thing you can do is just write the word equation out. And then once you've got the word equation written, then you can convert it to the chemical equation by replacing the names of the compounds with their chemical formula. And so this is where all of that nomenclature that we learned about ionic and covalent compounds is going to come in. Once you've got the chemical equation written out, then you can go ahead and take an inventory of how many atoms of each element you have on each side of the equation. So how many reactant atoms do you have of each element, and how many product atoms do you have of each element? And if they are not the same, then you're going to have to multiply each of those chemical formulas by an appropriate coefficient to make sure that we balance the number of atoms. So the coefficient is the large number that goes in front of a molecule that tells us how many molecules we have. And the subscript, remember, tells us how many of each element is present in the molecule. Once we've multiplied by different coefficients, then we're going to take inventory again just to make sure that the number of atoms is equal on both sides of the equation for every element that is in the equation. One thing to remember is that we can never change a subscript when we're balancing a chemical equation. You can only change coefficients. So never, 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 ever change a subscript, because if you do that, you're actually changing the chemical formula. We cannot do that. We can only change the number of molecules that we have. Okay, so now I'm just going to take you through a few examples to show you how to balance a chemical equation. So I've got all the steps written out again, but I'm just going to go through the actual reaction with you. So the example here is magnesium is reacting with oxygen to form magnesium oxide. So the word equation for that, our reactants are magnesium plus oxygen, because those are the things that are reacting together. And the product is magnesium oxide. So we write magnesium plus oxygen with our arrow that says produces, and it's magnesium oxide. To get the chemical equation, we're going to replace each of those chemical names with its formula. So magnesium is Mg. Oxygen, remember oxygen is a diatomic element, so we have to write that as O2. And magnesium oxide is an ionic compound, so magnesium has a charge of +2, oxygen has a charge of -2. When we crisscross those charges and reduce it to lowest terms, we end up with MgO. So now we need to take an inventory. How many atoms of each type are there in the reactants and the products? So if I count it out, I've got 1 magnesium and 2 oxygen on my reactant side, and on my products side, I have 1 magnesium and 1 oxygen. So that is not balanced. My oxygen atoms are not equal. So I'm going to multiply each of the formulas by its appropriate coefficient to try to balance this out. So what I'm going to do is put a 2 in front of magnesium oxide. When I do that, now I have 2 oxygens and 2 magnesiums on the product side. So now my magnesium is not balanced. So I'm going to put a 2 in front of magnesium on the reactant side. And when I do that, everything will balance out. Now I'll have 2 magnesium and 2 oxygen on the reactant side and on the product side. Okay, so the next example is copper 1 oxide and carbon are reacting to form copper and carbon dioxide. So I can write that out as a word equation first. Copper 1 oxide and carbon produces copper and carbon dioxide. And then I'm going to go ahead and go from words to chemical formulas. So Cu2O plus C produces Cu plus CO2. If I go ahead and take an inventory, I've got 2 copper, 1 oxygen, 1 carbon on the reactant side, 1 copper, 2 oxygen, 1 carbon on the product side. So my oxygen and my coppers are not balanced. So what I can do is put a 2 in front of Cu2O, and then that will give me 4 copper and 2 oxygen. So then what I'm going to do is put a 4 in front of the copper on the product side, and that will give me the 4 copper that I need to balance it out. Okay, so we're going to do lots more practice with this in class, and hopefully this will help to explain how to balance a chemical equation. I'll see you soon. Bye.